Today we find out the actual best weapon to use in the Ashlands biome and Valheim. Let's get to it. So we're gonna have to start this video with a little bit of context so you understand all the different testing and stuff that I've done here. The other day I put out a video that was just a brief video with some tips and tricks for surviving the Ashlands. In that video I didn't quite choose my words properly, and I also made a bit of a mistake saying that the charred were not weak to anything. That is false. I have done some testing and proved that the wiki is indeed correct, as many people commented, and that they are weak to silver damage. This wasn't too complicated of a test and just involved maxing out our bow skill using silver arrows, which do between 17 and 20 total spirit damage. That spirit damage ticks 7 times and should equal anywhere from 17 to 20 damage. But in order to verify it, it's really hard to do in-game, so you gotta shoot the charred, record it, and then take it into editing software and go frame by frame and count the numbers as they pop up. So to tell if they're weak to it, essentially we just need to get any numbers to add up to higher than 20, and I frequently did. Things that are weak to a specific type of damage take 1.5 times that damage. So 20 times 1.5 equals 30. So if we get 30 or higher, they are definitely weak to the damage. And we indeed did, as you can see on the screen. The part where I didn't choose my words correctly, I made it seem like they weren't resistant to anything, and they are indeed resistant to pierce damage. I said that in the context of using whatever weapon that you wanted to use, in the sense of the weapons that I kind of already mentioned already, so basically using frost, because none of the frost weapons do pierce damage. But as I stated, a lot of people in the comments said that they were weak to spirit, and that spirit was OP, and that got me wondering, is spirit OP? Because charred are by far what you are going to run into the most in the Ashlands, followed by maybe vultures. They seem to be rather thick as well, but everything else is kind of scattered around, and you see them, they're just not nearly as prevalent as the charred. So now that you have some context, let's talk about if spirit is actually OP or not. So I ran a few tests, and the first test that we're going to take a look at here is the time to kill. So the issue with spirit is that spirit is a dot. So I wanted to see if the damage over time is as good as just doing flat out damage. So the first thing I did is I set my sword skill to 100. This ensures that I'm doing the max low and max high values of the swords that I'm going to use. The swords that I chose are the Mistwalker and the Ashlands sword, the 𝙁ⴏⴏ, however you say that, I don't know. I'm just going to call it the flame metal sword from here on out because I don't know how to pronounce that word. So we have the Mistwalker and we have the flame metal sword. Now I needed to get their damage values as close to the same as I possibly could, and you can indeed do that. If we upgrade the Mistwalker to level 4, it deals between 37 and 59 slash damage, 28 and 46 frost damage, and 7 to 12 spirit. This means it can deal 72 to 117 damage. A level 3 flame metal sword can deal 72 to 116 damage. This means on the low end of their damage spectrum, they are equal. On the high end, they are 1 damage off in favor of the Mistwalker. So now I set up a situation where we can spawn in a charred and ensure that it's not going to be surprised, because I don't want the surprise attack in there. We're eliminating as many variables as we possibly can to just get an idea of, just damage wise, which one of these swords can kill a charred the quickest if they are of equal damage. So we spawn it in, we make sure it's not surprised, and we go into ghost mode. This will stop it from attacking me, and I can just lay into it and kill it as quickly as possible. Then I ran each of these tests 3 times in order to give us a damage average and make sure that we don't have any strange outliers in the mix. So in our first test with the level 4 Mistwalker sword, it took us 3 seconds and 28 frames. I know it's kind of weird that this is going by frames, but I'm timing this in my editing software, and that's the only timer I know how to do. So we have 30 frames equals 1 second. So our first time is 3 seconds, 28. So 28 frames. So 2 frames off of 4 seconds flat. Hopefully that makes sense and it's not too confusing. So we're going to say it's just shy of 4 seconds. Now the interesting thing here is the second attempt was the exact same and the third attempt was the exact same. So providing that there is no other variables in play, the Mistwalker is extremely consistent on taking out these charred, at least level 1 charred, in just shy of 4 seconds. Now moving on to the flame metal sword. First attempt of the flame metal sword was 3 seconds, 4 frames. Second attempt, 3 seconds, 4 frames. And third attempt, once again, 3 seconds, 4 frames. It turned out to be just as consistent as the Mistwalker sword, and faster, 0.8 seconds faster than the Mistwalker sword to be exact. Now hold up before you go thinking that all of a sudden the flame metal sword is going to be better than the Mistwalker sword. We have much more to discuss. But it is important to note that the flat damage is better than the damage over time if you can just go right at it and wail on the target without being hit. Now let's make things a little bit more practical. You cannot go into the Ashlands with a level 4 Mistwalker sword. You need stuff from the Ashlands in order to get the sword to level 4. You can, however, go into the Ashlands with a level 3 Mistwalker sword. And as soon as you get a little bit of flame metal, you can craft the flame metal sword. This can be done pretty quickly after you enter the Ashlands. So that got me wondering, should you immediately swap? If it is indeed faster and this thing does more damage by default, would it make more sense to swap to it as soon as you enter the Ashlands? So I set up the exact same test, this time with a level 3 Mistwalker and a level 1 flame metal sword. And I lowered my skill level down to 40 because I feel like 40 is a pretty good spot where you should be around this stage unless you've died like a ton. Theoretically, you probably should be a little bit higher, but I feel like 40 is a good medium value. And to be honest with these tests, the levels don't matter too terribly much because we're doing this based on time. So either way, the time's going to be in favor of one over the other, theoretically, no matter what your level is. So our first test with the Mistwalker came in at 3 seconds, 29 frames. Second test with the Mistwalker, 3 seconds, 28 frames. Third test with the Mistwalker, 3 seconds, 28 frames. So even at a lower level, it kills them just as fast as it does at max level. Next, we have the flame metal sword. Test number 1 was 3 seconds, 5 frames. Test number 2 was 3 seconds, 28 frames. And test number 3 was 3 seconds, 4 frames. This is why we do multiple tests, because we had one in there that was at 28 frames where the other two were at 5 and 4, essentially the same that we were getting beforehand. So this tells us that even at its base level, compared to an almost maxed out Mistwalker sword, the flame metal sword is still going to kill faster. But once again, killing is not everything. This just gives us a general idea and proves that silver isn't necessarily that big of a deal. Even though they're weak to silver, it doesn't really mean that much because of the damage over time. But, and there's a big but here, there is a massive difference between these two swords. And that is the Mistwalker does frost damage and frost damage chills. But before we get to that, there is one other thing that I did notice that is a massive difference between these two swords, and that is the flame metal sword can stagger really easily, and I could not get the Chard to stagger at all with the Mistwalker. It just can't put out enough damage quickly enough to build up their stagger bar to stagger them, where the flame metal sword seems to be able to do that. Also, I did do 2 other tests that I do want to share with you. And the first of those tests is the Frost Staff, because magic is king in the Ashlands, and I wanted to see, does it kill them any faster? And no, it is pretty slow. Our first test was 419, the second test was 425, and the last test was 426. So in each of those tests, we're looking at almost 5 seconds for time to kill under perfect circumstances. And that's not including the mana that we expend doing so. Then I thought, well, what can we do that's a ton of damage? And there's the Crom Sword, which does a massive amount of damage, and we can upgrade it and have it almost maxed out going into the Ashlands. And I thought, well, let's see what that does. Test number 1 was 409 and test number 2 was 508. I only did 2 of those because at the second one I was like, yeah, this is not going to be good. So time on that one was significantly slower, so you're better off just using the Mistwalker. Now let's talk about that massive but. The but there is frost damage. So obviously those tests are not representative of how it's going to be when you're actually fighting in the Ashlands. They are a test that was done to eliminate as many variables as possible, specifically to see if silver actually makes a difference when you are killing something. And no, it doesn't. However, what makes a massive difference is frost. Frost is insanely strong. They are not weak to frost, but it slows them down. And in a general combat situation, I found it much easier in a 1v1 to deal with them using the Mistwalker sword because it slows them down, and in doing so also slows down their attacks. Now the interesting thing here is we have the Frostner Mace, which also deals frost damage doing the same thing. Frostner is honestly another solid option because it also has knockback. I found it really easy on 101 and dealing with multiples to use the Frostner because while it lacks a little bit in range, that knockback knocks them backwards so that when they do attack, and if they are mid-attack and you are just a second faster, you knock them backwards and they can't hit you. It's middle click, so it's strong attack. So for middle mouse button for me, those of you who are playing on consoles, I don't know what that is for you, but the strong attack where you do the uppercut also has a massive knockback. You can actually get into a rhythm on a 1v1 where they walk to you, you hit them, knock them back, they walk to you, you hit them, knock them back, and it just kills them flawlessly and they never get a chance to actually attack you. Dealing with multiples for me was easier with the Mistwalker because the Mistwalker has a bit more range. I also found it easier to hit multiple targets at one time, where Frostner has a much shorter range. Even though it does have that knockback and you can get into a situation where you can juggle them, it's not that easy to do. And it was easier to hit multiple targets with the Mistwalker and kill multiple targets with the Mistwalker than it was with Frostner. So I would say Mistwalker first if you're going melee, and Frostner second if you're going melee, and you've been using Frostner, it is a solid option to just take to the Ashlands with you and continue to use it. Now, with that said, I did state melee because King is still the Staff of Frost. This thing is ridiculous. I handled 4 of them with absolutely no issue. You run in a circle to group them up and you just spray and pray back and forth, spray and pray back and forth, wait, spray and pray back and forth, wait. And it wasn't even a challenge, where using the Mistwalker was a little bit of a challenge, using Frostner was a little bit more, and I attempted multiple times to use the Flame Metal Sword and then just gave up. 1v1, the Flame Metal Sword is fine, but I could not handle multiples. And honestly, that can come down to a skill issue, but we're not basing this on skill. We're basing this for the average person. What is your easiest option to handle Chard in the Ashlands? And that easiest option is going to be magic, followed by any other type of frost damage that you can do, minus bows, because bows are pierce damage and you're going to be shooting yourself in the foot using pierce damage and frost arrows because you're going to take a lot more of them to bring these guys down. So with all of this testing done, I can safely say that silver is not what is giving you the edge in the Mistlands. Sure, the Chard are weak to it, but as I showed, it doesn't really matter. You could just kill them just as fast with flat damage because you are doing damage over time with silver. The thing that is making the Mistwalker feel so strong to so many people is the frost damage. When you are dealing with hordes of these things, slowing them down gives you a massive edge in combat. Slowing them down at range with magic is going to give you even more of an edge in combat. Granted, magic is going to be slower. It's going to take you longer to take them out. However, they are always at your whim because they are always at a distance from you. They don't ever actually get to attack and they don't move very fast. So let me know what you all think about these findings down there in the comments section. Did you find this video helpful and informational? If you did, please consider hitting the subscribe button and notification bell. And if you're looking for some more of my content, you can find a link to another one of my videos on the screen right now. I want to give an absolute massive shout out and thank you to all of my channel supporters for helping to keep these videos sponsor free. You all are absolutely amazing people. If you would like to become an official channel supporter, check out the links in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. If you're shy, you don't like to comment, just hit that thumbs up button and share your support. Until next time, thanks for watching.